Welcome into Locked On Knicks. Alex Wolf here. The Knicks are done in Summer League, unfortunately, losing in the championship game. But I don't think that affects my thoughts on these guys too much. I'm going to go into why Quentin Grimes showed us much more than what I ever thought he was going to show us as a player, why Jericho Sims maybe gives the Knicks too much of a good thing this coming year, and why the Westchester Knicks should be a pretty good time given what we just saw. Next on Locked On Knicks.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome in to Locked On Knicks. Today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. I'm Alex Wolf. I'm editor-in-chief at Knicks site The Strickland, which you can find at thestrick.land. And as I said in the intro there, we got to see the Knicks lose in the Summer League Finals. Very sad. It was it definitely was kind of sad because I feel like every single year we come into Summer League and the Knicks often will have, a couple of rookies, couple second year players, whatever. And every single year we talk ourselves into like, yeah, all right. Like I know this means nothing, but it's still pretty cool to get wins no matter the time of the year. And like I feel good about the Knicks young core right now. I bet you that they can, make some noise in this Summer League. And they almost never do. And then go figure this year, the year that they trade out of the first round and don't have a first round rookie to come bring in and show off during Summer League, they end up being awesome. And they were so much fun to watch. And it was really a fun little ride. It's a nice little distraction in the middle of the summer. Was sad to see the Knicks lose. However, I was seeing some people overreact a little bit to the Summer League finale there. And it's like, all right, I mean, the Blazers just played a good game, and they had the Knicks number the last time they played too. So I was not overly surprised to see that they managed to beat the Knicks again. Part of that was that Quentin Grimes just did not have a great game in this one, and that's fine. I mean, honestly, I don't know what people were expecting as far as overall for Grimes during the Summer League. I understand that he showed out quite a bit and did better, I think, than anybody thought he was going to do in that lead role. But it's so funny how expectations so quickly turn from, oh, let's just see what Grimes has, to why didn't Grimes lead the Knicks to a championship by himself? You know, I don't know. He had an off game. It's what happens. He's not going to be in that role in the NBA. And that leads me to my first point, actually. I'm doing 3 big takeaways from the Knicks Summer League here. And Quentin Grimes is more than just a 3-and-D guy, I think. I think I can comfortably say that after this Summer League. I'll just give the slash line real quick. 22.6 points per game, 4.2 boards, 4 assists. Shot 41.4% overall, 31% from 3, and 69% from the free throw line. None of those percentages are that great, but he was tasked with being the engine of this team, of being like the primary scorer, one of the primary distributors, and he did it. And I think that that is really the most important thing to take away here, because the big thing is he's never going to have to be that guy in the NBA, or maybe he develops into it at some point and then he can assume that role. But he's never going to be asked to be the guy bringing the ball down the floor. He's never going to be the like, just go get me a bucket guy in the NBA. It's just not going to happen if his career trajectory goes as most people probably think it's going to go, and he just becomes a really good role player. And especially on a team like, as of right now, looks like they're going to be starting Jalen Brunson, RJ Barrett, and Julius Randle. I mean, he's never going to have to bring the ball up the floor. He's never going to have to really break the defense down. What he's mostly going to have to do is catch and shoot, which we know that he can do really well. He's going to maybe want to have a better ability to attack closeouts, which I think we saw during Summer League and we saw at times during last season. And, you want him to be able to make that pass that he has to if, the situation arises. And I think Summer League proved that he can do that, particularly in those first few games, as well as we saw a little bit of that last year too. So I think that during this Summer League, we sort of just saw Grimes that was like the version of himself from last year, where they just basically, said, all right, let's just juice this all the way up, and you're going to have to do all that and more, regardless of if you're comfortable with it or not, because you're like the only dude that we can count on to be like a full-on offensive, wing engine for this team, in lieu of having, your normal teammate like RJ Barrett or something like that, or Julius Randle, or now Jalen Brunson. to sort of be that creator and that like automatic go-to scorer. So I think in that scope, he did really well and he probably exceeded expectations. And, I don't think that he has a star trajectory in him. And maybe I could be wrong about that. Like we've talked about on the show before, he had great high school pedigree and a really great high school class, which, obviously he was in that class with some of his teammates now, RJ Barrett, Cam Reddish, Zion Williamson, guys like that were all pretty highly regarded. Grimes was, I think, anywhere from like 8th to 12th or something in that class by general consensus. So, he has the pedigree to potentially be more than what he is now, but I think that he'll ultimately just settle in as like, maybe he doesn't turn into Donovan Mitchell, for example, even as just like a primary scoring guy, but maybe he turns into like I don't know, Andre Iguodala or something like that. Maybe not necessarily his early career version that was sort of that go-to scorer, but like the mid-career version that was just like the best role player on a really good team. I could very much see that. And if he's only going to be tasked with being like the 4th best offensive player on the floor most of the time, plus all the defense that he offers, he's going to have a ton of value in the NBA for a really long time. So I think this summer league was really good for Quentin Grimes to sort of test his limits. And I was really happy with the results. So I'm totally good with how things went. The last performance doesn't bother me at all. And, he made all summer league first team too, which super matters. I'm sure that he'll hang that plaque on his wall for the rest of time. But at any rate, I think that's basically it. I guess I should also just note, like, if he does end up being part of a Donovan Mitchell trade, I think that this summer league maybe could increase the value that he has to the Jazz in a way, because he did show, at least like on a team full of young players, he can take a leadership role. He can be that de facto guy to go to for a year, even if he's not the best at it. He could potentially be the one to take on that burden, because you figure if he goes to the Jazz, he's most likely joining a team that's going to be with like Walker Kessler, Leandro Balmaro, Nikhil Alexander Walker, Jared Butler. So like the team's not going to be good. But he could at least be serviceable, as they go on their trek towards Victor Wembanyama and go all aboard the tank. So I guess we'll see how that all goes. I want to talk about Jericho Sims in just a second, because I think that he had a really great summer league as well. Maybe in a weird way, it's going to be almost too much of a good thing for the Knicks this coming year. But first, I got to remind you guys that today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline.net. BetOnline.net is your number one source for all your betting needs and sports info. Find all the latest sports developments, league reviews, and news, including this year's Major League Baseball season and some All-Star stuff, which I'll get to in just a second. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sports wagering information, including live betting, esports, and scores. And BetOnline.net remains the best spot for all of your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. BetOnline.net is the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite sports and events, including MMA, boxing, and golf. And if you're like me, you're checking out some odds for the Home Run Derby, which is going on tonight. I'm admittedly getting this podcast out a little late, so by the time you're listening to this, maybe it's tomorrow. Maybe you could tell me I was an idiot for saying so, but I think Pete Alonso at plus 215 to win. No bias at all as a big Mets fan here and a big Pete Alonso fan. I think that's a steal. I think you take that all day. He's going to go. He's going to three-peat. He's going to join like, the Lakers and the Bulls, get a three-peat in this and do it in style, I'm sure, as we saw with Pete Alonso. So go bet Pete Alonso plus 215 at BetOnline. So head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, that brings me to the second segment here. And as I said, I want to talk about Jericho Sims. I feel like I've talked about him quite a bit. Probably won't get to talk about him quite as much during the regular season, so I guess it's a good thing to get it out now. Like, he is definitely going to be the third center in the rotation going into the season behind Mitchell Robinson and Isaiah Hartenstein, which I'll get into in just a minute. But as far as the summer league performance, Sims ends summer league with averages of 11.6 points, 9 rebounds, 2 stocks, and 2.2 assists per game. I really liked what we saw out of him in all respects. I think that he did a good job of displaying his brand of rim protection, where it was just sort of like rim deterrence, like him being like, I can jump really high and get in front of you. And that scared a bunch of people off. And he did a pretty good job with that. He also still showed that he's pretty switchy on defense, which is awesome. I think that that's something which I'll mention in a minute. That's maybe his most unique trait amongst the three centers that the Knicks have right now. Obviously, as a finisher, he's not just one of the most explosive guys on the Knicks. He's probably one of the most explosive players in the entire NBA as far as just pure vertical ability and then, power to just stuff that ball through the hoop. I mean, he is one of the best out there at that. So I I think that he didn't really prove too much new. I think that he just showed, okay, I am who I said I was, or he didn't say, but who he showed he was towards the end of last year with his play, and really just sort of solidified what he can be in the NBA, which is a hyper athletic rim running center who maybe has a little more finesse to his game than we think. Like, did show off some, some little post moves and stuff at different points during this summer league, which he did last year in summer league too. So I'd be intrigued to see if he brings any of that out during an actual NBA game this year. But really, just a great center who sets great screens, plays his role fantastically, and I love that he's on the Knicks for 3 more years on a pretty affordable deal. But I will say, oh, and I almost didn't bring up the one little extra thing that I liked from him, bringing the ball up the court after a rebound and starting the fast break. I thought was really great too. Like, that's a really cool little skill. A number of people that I know and like on Twitter had pointed that out early on, and I started watching for it after that, and it was the absolute truth. Like, that was a really cool little development to see, especially because that's not something that like Mitchell Robinson really seems comfortable with. And I would be lying if I said I've watched enough of Hartenstein to know for sure if he is. But like, if you get a center that can grab the ball and at least take a few dribbles and start the break and not just get it stripped from him, and then get things moving, especially on a team where like Sims, if he sees minutes and Julius Randle is still on the team, probably going to be seeing his minutes with Obi Toppin. Obi is like the master of getting out in transition. So if that transition can get started sooner, then all the better, because then that makes it that much easier to find Obi streaking towards the hoop. Um, but what I was saying at the beginning, I still think he's probably the third guy. Obviously Mitchell Robinson just got 4 years, $60 million contract, which is paying him like a starting center. Hartenstein is being paid like a good backup, 2 years, $16 million. So I do think that Sims offers a little more in switchability than either of those guys, which is obviously a great trait to have in the modern NBA. You want guys that can switch and not get punished if they have to, be on a point guard or a shooting guard or something like that for a second. And I don't think that there's a big rebounding drop off once you put him in there for Mitchell Robinson, and also for Hartenstein, who I think is a good rebounder too. So no matter what, you can get really good rebounding from these guys. I think his rim protection is not quite as good as certainly Mitch, and maybe not as good as Hartenstein either. But he's certainly not a slouch as at protecting the rim. Like, he can again get vertical, and the older he gets, the more experienced he gets, the better he'll get at that skill too, of just getting vertical, even if he's not going to get a block. So I think that maybe he could see some spot minutes with that switchability if the Knicks find themselves facing a team that's really going small. Maybe he's their best look, or maybe it's Hartenstein because of the shooting ability. Who knows? But there are some scenarios where I could see Sims maybe getting some minutes, even in a crowded, 3-man center rotation. But for better or worse, I think this is where the Knicks find themselves. And the only reason I say for worse is, with three centers as good as what they have right now, it's basically a guarantee that Obi Toppin or Julius Randle are never going to get a minute at the 5 this year. And, even under a non-Tibbs coach, that might be the case. But especially under Tibbs, there's basically zero chance that, they're going to go small at any point. And I guess, like I said, playing Sims might be the closest that the Knicks do go to going small. Or at least they now have Hartenstein, who, even if he's not like a quote-unquote small ball center, at least is a quote unquote shooting center that can, space the floor a little bit and give you that semblance of a lineup like that. So maybe it's an overstated problem, but as someone who's wanted to see Obi and Randall play together, especially if Randall is still going to be on the team, I mean, it's a little disappointing in its own way, but I'm not, it's like complaining about having too much money or something. Like, the Knicks have three guys that realistically look like they could potentially be starting centers in the NBA. Sims probably isn't there yet, but I could easily see a trajectory where he ends up a starting center in the NBA. And going forward, that does kind of, that helps the Knicks. Like, they do have Sims now locked up to a 3-year deal where he makes, I think, between 1.5 million to 2 million for the rest of the deal. So that sets him up in a good place as far as being able to, eventually, if a big deal comes along down the line, let's say like, I don't know, Joel Embiid or something becomes available. I doubt it's going to happen because of how things are going in Philly, but that Leon Rose connection, whatever, if he becomes available and the Knicks want to use Mitchell Robinson's salary and talent level, obviously, to sort of say to Philly, like, here's a really talented center, then they still have another guy sitting there. Or even if they trade Mitch for like a wing or a non-center, then Sims, is a inexpensive center and he's locked up for 3 more years. So it's a good position to be in that the Knicks are in. It's like, again, it's like complaining about having too much of a good thing. Like, oh, I just made breakfast and I have too much bacon. What am I going to do with it? You know what I mean? Like, nobody really complains about that stuff. So anyway, I think I could get to my third point now as well, which is a pretty simple one. Nice lighthearted note to go out on and send summer league off. The Westchester Knicks, I think, are going to be a pretty fun time this year. I have not exactly made them appointment television outside of a couple times when Deuce was playing there last year. I watched it. I watched the game online and sort of skimmed through to see some Deuce and whatever and see what was going on and some Jericho Sims and all that stuff. But just by themselves, I think the Westchester Knicks might have a pretty fun little squad this year. Like Farron Hunt, again, I'll give him his flowers one more time. Like, I think he really showed a great skill set as far as being a defensive minded wing slash like stretchy power forward kind of guy. Like, he offers on defense a lot, I think, of what Obi Toppin does, which is just like ability to play passing lanes and be disruptive, but then also get out and transition and finish out there, and occasionally hit shots as well. So like in a post Julius world where the Knicks have Obi and then maybe they sign or trade for someone to be his backup, as sort of a injury insurance type guy or like break in case of emergency type, I don't mind having Farron Hunt on the roster. I think that, the defense will probably translate to the NBA no matter what, even if his offense is a little behind or honestly, maybe just not quite good enough to be a consistent NBA player. Just defensively, I don't think you lose anything with him on the floor at the NBA level. Deuce McBride, I think, will probably get some time with the Westchester Knicks as well. And hopefully they can emphasize him getting inside more often because I think that was for sure one of his biggest weaknesses in summer league. I brought it up a number of times, and I think he relies a little too much on pull up shooting, and he's really good at it. So it's tough to really be like, oh, Deuce, you should never pull up again. Obviously, he should. It's a skill that he has, and it's a very valuable skill in the NBA. So like, he shouldn't abandon it. But the guy used to be a football player. He was a quarterback, but like a pretty big quarterback from what it looks like. I mean, he's well built. He's not like he might be height and wingspan and stuff similar to like Emmanuel Quickly, but he's not built like Emmanuel Quickly. Like he's pretty beefy, for a guy who's like a point guard. So I would love to see him get inside more, especially against G League competition, start learning how to use his body to, sort of create space for himself. Sort of like what we've seen for RJ Barrett, where he struggled a bit at first with when he would get inside, what do you do? And, it's something that you have to learn over time. We're like, okay, this is how I create space. This is how I finish around someone who's much bigger than me. This is how I finish over someone who's smaller than me, all this stuff. Deuce will get there. I think hopefully he'll be given some time to figure that out in the G League again this year, even if it's only a few games, like he went down, it seemed like a ton because he averaged so many points and it was so crazy every time he went down. But I think he only went down in the G League like 6 times last year. And that's fine. Just do it like when you're at home on a homestand, and you've got 2 games, 2 Knicks games bookending a Westchester Knicks game. Just, if he's not going to be playing, which, again, this is all contingent on if he stays, if there's a Donovan Mitchell trade or whatever. But, if he's not going to be playing, have him go to the Westchester Knicks in between those 2 Knicks games. Then he can still practice with his teammates, on the big squad, but can get some reps in Westchester. So hopefully he's able to do that and keep refining his skill set. It's easy to forget, but he was one of the younger sophomores coming out last year in the draft. So, he's still fairly young. He's definitely still got a lot of room to grow. So I hope that he's given those opportunities in Westchester. And after seeing him in the summer league, I have no doubt he'll still crush it in the G League, just like he did last year. So that'll be fun to see as well, just to see him, light it up a little bit and have a good time. Hopefully with getting inside a bunch and drawing tons of free throws, because he shot like, I think he can't have missed more than like 1 or 2 free throws the entire summer league. He shot like 95%. So definitely worth it for him to get in there. Trevor Keels and Jan Montero. I apologize. I think I was pronouncing it Gene. It's Jan Montero. Both definitely need some work. Trevor Keels, I've said a few times, I'm not going to beat a dead horse here. I also just went on Locked on Blue Devils the other day. If you guys want to check that out, talked about RJ Barrett, Cam Reddish, and Trevor Keels. But he needs to put in some work on his conditioning, I think, and try to get his burst up. He needs to find a way to create separation from NBA level defense because, quite frankly, he was facing college level and like journeyman NBA, I guess, level defense in summer league because you have some guys that are just trying to find a contract, that have been at this in the G League and, the summer league, whatever, for years that want to try to find a home, and also just fellow first and second year guys. And no matter who was matched up on him, it seemed like Keels was sort of the weak link on offense, like not being able to blow by anybody, not being able to get the elevation to get a shot off super clean. I think he just really needs to work on the physical aspect because I liked what I saw from mentality and, defense, like the way that he approaches defense and plays passing lanes and stuff. I didn't think he took too many gambles, maybe gambles a little bit, but I think that's a useful role for certain guys. And, even if he gets in shape and loses a little bit of weight or whatever, he'll still be built really big for a guard. So, he could lose 15, 20 pounds and still hold up physically, but also hopefully gain, some to his vertical, some to his, end to end explosiveness and like first step explosiveness to be able to get to the hoop easier, and then use that pretty good size that he has to hopefully clear a little space for himself and be able to finish around the rim. Instead of what we mostly saw during the summer league, which was anytime he would get inside the 3-point line, he was easily able to be blocked by someone taller or someone more athletic. So because he just wasn't getting a lot of elevation on pretty much anything, anywhere on the floor. So that's what I hope to see from him. For Montero, I think they should try to let him be more of a facilitator. I think that he showed some similar to Deuce. I think he showed some pull-up shooting ability. He's got sort of like the cojones to, do that sort of thing and create his own shot, take threes, get inside and actually take like mid-range jumpers as well. Needs to work on getting all the way to the hoop. Needs to work on just like running an offense. He didn't seem super comfortable with the ball in his hands, trying to, direct traffic out there. So I would hope that he gets that opportunity in Westchester to sort of grow. Hopefully the Knicks are able to take advantage of that, though. I fully acknowledge like he was a pretty well-regarded undrafted player. So if he goes to the Westchester Knicks and starts showing out, I wouldn't be surprised if the Knicks, particularly if they want to keep Farron Hunt, don't just say, well, all right, well, I guess we got to let you go because, some other team wants you on a 2-way deal, which happened with like Miles Powell and I think a couple other guys that the Knicks have had in their G League system at one time or another. So something to keep an eye on with Montero. But I would say between Keels and Montero, I liked what I saw out of Montero quite a bit better, though I think maybe I see a little higher of a ceiling for Keels just because I can see a world where if he can just get an NBA shape, he could potentially turn into a pretty productive player. Lastly, I'll just say like if Daquan Jeffries ends up in Westchester, I think he'll be a really fun player to watch. I think that he's like a real bulldog. It seems like he kind of just does a little bit of everything, maybe a bit of a jack of all trades, master of none. He's another guy that, maybe will start the year in Westchester. It probably will get a call up from some NBA team at some point on a 10-day deal. I think they said on one of the broadcasts he played for like 3 different teams last year over the last 2 years or something like that, has gotten some NBA service time in that time. So, but kudos to him. I thought he had a really solid summer league. I thought he did himself a lot of favors if he's trying to, find some NBA work this year. And then Micah Potter, I don't know. I don't know if he's going to make it to the NBA. Again, maybe he's a guy that gets some 10-day looks or something from, the Thunders of the world later in the season when they just need warm bodies out there. But I don't really know if I see an NBA career for him. That said, at the G League level, I think the Westchester Knicks, as of right now, don't look like they have a lot of guys that project to be there that will be like true bigs. So if he goes down there and he plays, center for the Westchester Knicks, I think he could provide the rebounding. And we saw like a smidge of rim protection and stuff like that in the summer league. So against that level of competition, I think he could be pretty good. Seems to have a decent touch on offense as well. So nice player there too. Hopefully he finds a little bit of NBA service time this year too. Hopefully all the guys that were on the Westchester Knicks eventually make it to the NBA because it was cool. Or I'm sorry, the Summer League Knicks, maybe eventually Westchester Knicks, find some playing time in the NBA because it was cool rooting for them. It was cool having some Knicks to root for and to watch and to observe for a little bit. But now we're back to the lull. So till next time, Gavin and I will have some more good shows coming up for you guys still. Free agency stuff to talk about, obviously, more so on the trade front than free agents at this point. Might have our boss coming on for an episode this week. That should be pretty fun, maybe even as soon as tomorrow. So keep your ears out for that. Other than that, we'll have other stuff to talk about. We'll get into peak off-season form. Hopefully do a mailbag soon where we can answer some questions from you guys that you have of us. We'll, of course, have our fingers on the pulse of the Donovan Mitchell situation and keep you guys up to date with that. But until next time, I've been Alex Wolf. Thank you all for listening, and I will talk to you guys all soon. Peace.